Good afternoon, everybody. Today, I would like to introduce the amazing, talented Steve Babcock, Chief Creative Officer at one of the biggest digital agencies, VayenrMedia. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So today, Steve, I believe your career began in the most cliche way. Can you please tell us a little more about this and give us some background?
Yes. Yeah, I say cliche because it feels like it's such a narrative for a movie or a Hollywood blockbuster where a young kid who doesn't know any better starts in the mailroom of a company and then works his way up from there. And that really is what happened. I was going to school for something sort of related. I wanted to be a director. I wanted to work in film or do something creative. I had never thought about advertising. I grew up in a small town in Idaho, and I don't know why that it just assumes that if you grew up in Idaho, you didn't know that advertising was a job. I certainly didn't. So I got a job at an advertising agency through a friend of a friend or whatever, because it was really flexible hours so that I could go to school. And while I was there, I was able to see that this whole world of creativity and making, and whether it was making TV commercials or out-of-home billboards or print pieces. Anyway, it was just like, wow, this is really, really cool. I never thought of this, and I'm really attracted to it. So I, befriended some of the folks that you really get to know people when you sort their mail. This is back pre-email, so you get to know about a lot about people when you're handing them their magazine subscriptions and the things that they're interested in. And so I befriended some folks there and taught myself what was Photoshop 4, I believe. It was pre-layers, and then there was a scholarship contest that the agency had that I was fortunate enough to win.
Wow,
so
that's amazing.
Yeah, I was able to get money to finish school, but then they also offered me a job, and really I took it and have stayed in the industry ever since. So cliche in that it really wasn't what I thought I was going to do, and I was able to work my way up from sorting mail.
Wow, it's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, working in one of the biggest digital agencies, VayenrMedia, you bring a unique perspective to the business. Could you give us some insight into this?
Yeah. In the 20 years that I've been doing this, working on the creative side of marketing and advertising, I've seen, well, actually, it's interesting. I probably should have seen more change than I have in those last 20 years. If you think about it, advertising especially over the last, call it 10 years, has really struggled to keep up. Historically, advertising, as well as, the news media and Hollywood, pretty much controlled the narrative because they controlled the pipes. That's any information or entertainment or messaging of any kind that got out to the masses was controlled that way. Then we reached this era of social and digital where everybody contributes to that narrative.
Yeah.
And advertising, in general, has really struggled to adapt to that. So you see a lot of agencies still functioning in a way where, their model is based around making a 30-second television commercial.
Yeah, and it's outdated, right?
That's right. And it gets pushed out to the masses. And I think there's many things that I feel are different about VayenrMedia, but if I were to kind of boil it into one, is the understanding and appreciation, and it's the understanding and appreciation of media, meaning the platforms and the analytics and data that you can glean from your interaction with real customers, and the empathy toward the end consumer, where it is, now you live in a world where, okay, I'm not making one creative idea and forcing it on everybody. I'm really understanding the platforms, the media on those platforms. I'm understanding all the different audiences, and I'm making 50 different ideas and catering them.
At probably a quarter of the price too, right?
Yeah, and in half the time. So yeah, it's not cush anymore. It's not, hey, I get 10 weeks to make one commercial and I'm staying at a big expensive hotel and all that. It's not that anymore. And quite frankly, I find it to be more fun. I'm having more fun now than I have, than I can recall in my career.
That's amazing. So one of the things that I have obviously watched you closely and obviously just pay attention to some of the detail. So I believe you're one of the masters at pitch deck, and this is something that really needs to be talked about. As someone who is such a specialist in the world of pitch decks, can you please tell those of us who don't know what a pitch deck is, what it is, and what it's used for?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm the master of pitch decks, but I'll take it. That is quite a compliment. I find, whether it is whatever it is, but it's important that it be, and that's why you'll say it's a deck. I do think it's a physical manifestation of an idea.
Yes.
Presented to somebody in hopes of that somebody substantiating, whether it's financial or whatever. You want them to buy into something or believe something. And so if that's really the case, a lot of times I'll see, business plans or whatever it's called, that really miss the mark. To me, a pitch deck is the more human you can make the communication through a pitch deck, the better. And so if you think about that, it's like, number one, how to be a really good conversationalist or storyteller, or how to be engaging. Understand your audience, number one, like very much understand them. And sometimes that means you might have to make a whole, 20 versions of your whatever it is you're trying to pitch. If you're trying to pitch to venture capitalists, you might need to go, okay, here's one. I've done my homework on them and I know the types of things they are interested in. I'm going to rewrite my narrative a little to them. And then here's another one, and I'm going to do it this way. So I think that's important to understand your audience so that you can meet them in the middle and basically talk on their terms. That's just sort of the basis of being a good conversationalist, really. The other part that I think the most important is just telling the story, and thinking of it in classic storytelling parts, like the setup. What's the setup? What's the conflict? How is that conflict resolved? And then what's the conclusion? Or what you believe would be the conclusion if you're pitching a business model or whatever. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that I see. A lot of people just sort of, I want to put all the information in there versus no, humans are emotional beings.
Yes.
And I think it's a really simple way to say, here's the state of the union, here's the situation, here's the issue, right? Here's the problem or the challenge or the need or the demand, and here's the solution. I thought of this, and because of that, this will happen. And to make it very simple.
Yes.
Right.
But so people don't like to read.
No. And then just down to mechanics of like decks, I always say, well, there's two kinds. There's the kind that there's going to be a document that is designed to be read and not presented. That's different. That's like, I'm sending you some information and I'm going to lay that out and design that in a way that you're going to sit down at your own time and read through it. Again, it's still important to tell the story, but then there's the presentation. And I think the presentation deck is more critical, where I see it time and time again, where, almost every meeting, and anybody listening to this will probably right now be like, oh, that's so true. Any meeting, someone gets to a slide where they will say, oh, okay, there's too much on this. I'm not going to go through it all. I'm like, why is it in there? You're doing a presentation. Think of your slide. Any word that is on a slide of your pitch deck, assume it needs to be communicated. If it doesn't, then it doesn't need to be in there on the presentation, that particular deck. So it ends up being more like cue cards things that allow them to get, oh, okay, I know the basics, and then I can talk about it. Okay, next slide, next slide. Don't cram it all in there. And again, make it very simple. You're basically making it so whoever your audience is looking at that and thinking, this is such a no-brainer.
Yes.
But you've got to do the work of setting that up.
For sure. So one of the things, just leading on from that, is do you think that pitch decks have replaced business plans? Because I see it all the time where people, especially here in the US and maybe Europe, in other places, not so much, but do you think that pitch decks have become a replacement for business plans?
I mean, I do. I think they're somewhat synonymous, really. I think it's, because I do think, typically business plans will have, sometimes some extra information such as the, specifics down to like finance and operations. They'll usually get a little more into the nitty gritty of like, oh yes, we're going to need this much money to do this and this and this and this, and then here's an exit plan and all the things that for investors that are really interested in seeing that. But I still think going more of a pitch deck approach where I'm telling this story, but then, any investor really, if you think about it, they just need to know what is my money going to be used for, and how will it increase? How will it be an investment? But I think that's the key thing. If you can't explain to an investor why and what that money that they're going to invest in is going to be used for, or why you need it in order to make your reality, then that's a major red flag, where it's just in a world where everyone's just trying to raise money. It's like, well, okay.
But they can't justify the spend necessarily on
like
investment.
What do you need it for? I mean, I recently did a modest investment in a water company. Okay. And it was great. That was it. I was like, well, why do you need this money? It was very clear. I need this to be able to run our first batch of bottles, of cans, really. And it's like, understood. I got that, because then you'll be able to do this and this and this and this. Make it very simple. But so I think they're one and the same, really. But okay. I would probably call something more of a pitch deck just by the name of it. It's like it's a proactive. I'm trying to get something from this document, whether it's...
And it's not as old-fashioned, I don't believe. Like, I think it's just, it's a much better way of presenting. So what would you say is unique in terms of your presentation and the critical details that go into pitch decks that you've done in your career?
I don't know. I'm not sure. That's a tough question. I would say this, I have found it's probably just more my personality and why I don't think I would do well on like Shark Tank, because that is set up to be such a like critical, you rehearse every word, you can't screw it up, you've got to be so just, details, speeds and feeds is like, I like to, pitch as much of myself as I do my idea. So for me, it's just about being very relaxed and real. And I think that shows confidence. I think when you really believe in your idea, you don't have to overcompensate with, a certain level of mannerisms and things like that. So when I go into pitch, again, it's less of a, when I'm pitching like advertising ideas on behalf of the agency, I mean, there's not a lot to lose there versus if I were to, pitch my life, all of my life savings on an idea that I have and I need money to survive, that's probably a little different. But otherwise, it's like, yeah, this is what it is. I also don't really believe in like the dog and pony show. I think the more dog and pony you have in your show means that your idea itself isn't that great. Like, have a really great idea and then just succinctly explain why it's great.
Okay, I mean, that makes a complete sense. So, for those who don't know about pitch decks, are they mainly used for investor purposes, or are they used for potential clients? So you obviously speak about two different things, and you did touch on it briefly earlier. But what would you say pitch decks are used for predominantly, or do you think that it doesn't really matter? I
mean, my 14-year-old daughter recently put a pitch deck together to convince me of why she and the family should have a dog.
Okay.
So I think it's, I think the notion of a pitch deck is twofold. One, probably most important, it's for the person, the creator, to really get their stuff together, to really get their idea together. I was just, my wife has a really, really good idea, I believe, in the health and fitness space, and that's a space that she's very passionate about, and she really does. I'm like, okay, she's come up with a business idea that, with that, like, that feels really, really strong. Yeah. And she would talk a lot about it and do this and that and this and this. And over the time, I'm like, you have to create one of these, and of course, she'd be like, I don't know the tools, or I can see Google Slides, or here's a Sharpie and a stack of blank paper. Just create the narrative. And as she was able to do that, her story got tighter. Whereas, and she was like, oh, I'm not a tech company. I'm a this company. Okay, got it. And it's just important to do before anything. I even told her this, and this would be my advice to anybody. Before you even think about who you're going to meet with, or investors, or money, or capital, or anything. Yeah. Everybody, again, if you have a writing utensil and a something to write on, can formulate a pitch deck or business plan, whatever you want to call it, and do that work. And that is the foundation for anything. Without that, like,
even if it's a napkin.
That's right. No, totally.
Yeah.
Yep.
So having worked with so many big brands in your career, what are some of the biggest lessons and learnings you have experienced that you can share with us?
I would say that one of the biggest things I've learned is that all the people are the same. Meaning, I remember, earlier on in my career, I only worked on very small brands, local brands, regional brands, and and they were still there. They were still like brand managers and market, client people. And then I remember when I moved to another agency where it was like the first time working on very big global brands, I was really scared. I was really nervous. Yeah. And it didn't take long for me to be like, okay, these are just the same kind of people. They're still just humans. They have bigger budgets. There's more money, but everyone is still a human trying to do a job. They have other lives outside of their jobs, and kids too, and so it's like really understanding the human nature behind it. Yeah, everything. It's like that was a big learning for me, really. And since learning that, you no longer have those like nerves or types. It doesn't matter how big the company is. We're all still. You get surprised sometimes. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, we're all still. There's not like superhumans that work at bigger brands, basically, is what I'm saying. It's like everybody's still the same, still wants to connect on a personal level, still wants to feel good, feel successful, feel important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's just I think people confuse the people in those positions with the name of the company, because I think that's where people find it maybe daunting. So then they feel like they can't necessarily relate. But like you said, everybody's just human at the end of the day. And if you take away their title, they're just people. So
that's right.
So what are some of your career highlights? And can you share what were some of your best pitch decks or best presentations to win business or close funding for investment for startups? So can you give us an example?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, you get asked this question a lot, typically of like what's the thing you're most proud of in your career, or what's this or that, and I don't actually have one that I would say that about. I've had a lot of successes, a lot of failures, a lot of learning, all of those things, and I have a lot of things that I've liked for different reasons. I would say one thing that I did enjoy, and I guess maybe it's just coming to mind right now that you asked this question, was about 5 years ago, I came up with an idea, and I probably, why I like this is because, well, A, it's a thing that I believe has helped people in the world. Sometimes in advertising, you just sell stuff all the time. You use your creativity to sell stuff, and it's nice to be able to use your creativity to hopefully make a positive impact in the world. But I was living in Colorado, and I had a friend of a friend who had lost a relative from somebody who was texting and driving, and so it was kind of fresh on my mind. There was some of the large telecom companies like AT&T was putting out some really like moving documentaries. It was like, I think it was called like The Last Text, and it was like, they were really hard to watch. There was like people telling the story of a text they were sending when someone was killed. And anyway, and I just was thinking to myself of like, why doesn't this work very well? Like, why is this not, here we are putting out all this great advertising and marketing, and yet the statistics of, fatalities or whatever around distracted driving are still on the rise. And also me, I'm sitting there in Colorado driving around. I'm like, I'm always using my phone. I'm like this. So it was just interesting to me. And while I was driving, there was like a red marker, and it just dawned on me because I was holding my phone. And when you pick up your phone, typically if you hold it like that, your thumb is on front, because you use your thumb to. And I just said, you know what I'm going to do? Because I'm like, I guess I do have this habit, and I definitely don't want to be the person who's responsible for somebody losing their life. So I decided I would color in my thumbnail red with that marker. And it kind of gets messy because Sharpie actually doesn't stay on your nail, and so it kind of got over my clothes. But I later found some of my wife's nail polish and actually painted my thumbnail red, just that one nail. So every time I would pick up my phone, I would see this thing, and it would remind me that, oh, this isn't working, I'd put it down. And so I was just kind of doing it, and it really, really worked for me, like instantly, because you at that point have to make a very conscious decision to keep doing it. And that's really the problem. And I was like, wait, this isn't an awareness issue. People are aware that this is a bad thing, and they're aware that it's happening. They needed a tool. You need a reminder. So I was like, oh, and a lot of people would ask me about it because it was like kind of weird. Like, why does like one thumbnail painted red? And then I would explain it to them, and they would, oh, it's really cool. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. So I was like, it kind of has inherent virality. People liked the idea. They wanted to do it. So I was talking to some people like, you should make it a thing. So I literally just made a website and a very simple video called Red Thumb Reminder. And it spread like crazy, like crazy. Like schools everywhere. Everyone was looking for something to fight this with. And instead of marketing, and there's a lot of slogans and like, a lot of stuff to try to scare you and here was the thing. And it was really lighthearted. Like the messaging and everything was like fun, and like, this is a positive way that we can go at this. And it went everywhere. There were police departments in like Canada that were doing it, schools, and I eventually kind of just got busy and left it alone. I think the website's still there. But from that, a bunch of other splinter things happened. And it was just the other day, I was reminded by it because I got included tagged on a tweet from a group that started because of my Red Thumb Reminder. They're called My Red Thumb, and they're still going like really strong and really becoming a big deal. And they had tweeted and tagged, like, because it was like distracted driving day or something, and they had tagged like, thanks to the originator Steve for starting this whole thing. So it was really cool to see, like, wow, I have to imagine that it's done some good. And there's no way to prove it, but if I've kept one person from driving distracted, maybe it's worked. But so that's something I'm probably most proud of, because it was like super simple and smart, and I have nothing to do with it anymore. Like, I don't ever drive out here anyway, but it's really cool to see like people doing it.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. So, having such a great role as Chief Creative Officer for VayenrMedia, what is it that you feel that separates VayenrMedia from so many other companies that you have worked with in the past?
A lot, like I said, a lot about the way we approach work and being very consumer centric, fast, being able to create quality messaging at, at half the time is what it takes these days. I mean, that is like the foundation to be successful in marketing. I think we have a very interesting CEO. Gary Vaynerchuk there's a very big difference, and I think a lot of people don't know that between, Gary V, that brand and that world, and VayenrMedia. VayenrMedia is one of his companies that does marketing for clients, but there's obviously shared values, but those two worlds are quite different. I think a lot of people who I've met assume that if you work at VayenrMedia, you're a carbon copy of Gary Vaynerchuk.
No.
It's just not true. But no. So I think that's very different. There's no legacy. Most agencies are built on years and years and years of legacy and how you have to do things. And, and with this company's only 10 years old. And we're still figuring out how to do things. And I hope we never figure it out, because I think the minute you figured something out, you have stopped. You have
stopped growing.
Ceased to innovate. Yeah. So it's a company that some people come here and go, whoa, not for me. Like, this is out of control. And some people come here and go, wow, this is the place where I can do anything I want to do. Like, so it's very entrepreneurial based. Like, if you are a driven person and you want to come in and see what is somewhat chaotic, but you see opportunity in chaos, this is your place. But if you're like, I'm paralyzed by any sense of craziness, then there's a lot of other super slow dinosaur agencies that will work well for that person.
And do you feel that it's more like a family working with VayenrMedia, or the people within VayenrMedia or under the brand itself? I mean, do you feel that that's also a differentiating factor, or is it, what's your view on that?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so personally. For me, I've most agencies, at least that I've had the fortune of working with, have been very close knit and tight. So I can't say, there's some magic sauce here that makes that feel more like a family than other places. That's just not been my experience. It's a really great environment, and there's no tolerance for anything other than that. And so there's people treat each other right and with respect. But I've been really fortunate with the places I've worked that have been like that and really family centric, or you really feel like I'm here because I want to get this person's back and I want to help this other person out and things like that. I've kind of had that everywhere I've worked. So.
Okay, no, that's great. So the last question that I have is what would be the 3 key pieces of advice you would give to entrepreneurs that would be invaluable?
All right, 3 pieces of advice. 1 would be to constantly be making ideas, meaning never get stuck. Don't just have one idea and sit in front of the starting line and do all, I think a lot of times you just be like, I have a thing and I've got to do all this research before I can even take one step. Have as many ideas as you can in motion. Like, be making and not so precious about everything would be my number 2. Like, half of your ideas will fail. But because you don't just have one idea that you're betting your whole farm on, that's okay. Because you're constantly ideating and you're constantly putting your ideas into the world. And then my 3rd advice would be, is probably generic sounding, but to just always do the right thing by people, even if it doesn't benefit you. I guess that's advice for anybody, but definitely, in an entrepreneurial life where you are needing others to help you and assist you. And sometimes that can get into a place where you can get really, desperate. Like, I need this. Like, always do the right thing, even if it means it's going to take you longer to get where you need to get to, because it will pay off.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Steve, for your time. And I appreciate everything. And hopefully we can catch up with your progress in the future.
Oh, that would be great. No, I appreciate the invite and speaking with you today.
Thanks so much.
All right, we'll see you.